Hello everybody, Dokkan Assets here. Today we are back with another Dokkan Battle animation analysis video, and today we are looking at the big bad man himself, AGLLR JIREN. Obviously this was quite the anticipated unit considering that we got UI Goku, and obviously JIREN has been on like the the title screen and everything, and obviously UI Goku and JIREN fight and everything like that. It was kind of expected that this was going to be the Part 2 LR. And I am actually quite a big fan of JIREN. I think I've warmed up to the big man a lot over the last couple of years. So I am actually pretty excited for this release, despite the fact that I still don't have UI Goku. I'm 1,150 stones in, I think, and I still don't have him, unfortunately. But I digress. Today we're going to be taking a look at JIREN's animations. Now, before we get into the meat and potatoes, or the small potatoes of this video, which is kind of funny considering Forku is actually relevant in this video, we do have a little bit of an unfortunate circumstance with this one because neither Jihad or Kevin X, the two guys who I usually rely on for the Dokkan versus anime videos, unfortunately Jihad has not said anything on Twitter in a little while, and Kevin X said that unfortunately he was going to be able to do it, but he got a little bit busy. Life happens. It'd be like that sometimes. So unfortunately for today's video, we do not have a Dokkan versus anime comparison for JIREN. So next video, whenever I upload that, with any animation analysis related stuff, I will put the Dokkan versus anime video in that one for JIREN. So look forward to that. It is a bit unfortunate because obviously a lot of the time when we look at these animations, they kind of give us context by looking at what's in the anime as well. But it just be like that sometimes, right? That's just the logistics of, trying to get these videos up as soon as possible and whatnot. Now, with that being said, later in this video, we are going to look at the UI animations real quick. This will be at the very end of the video though, so if you're just here for JIREN, we will look at all the JIREN stuff first, because I said in the last video with UI that we would take a look at Kevin X's comparison for the UI versus Dokkan video, Dokkan versus anime video rather, in the next video that I uploaded for the animation analysis, so that would be this one. Now, the really crazy thing to think as we kind of transition into talking about JIREN himself, first of all, gotta show the card arts here because these are actually really cool. I quite like these. I think that they absolutely cooked on this one too. I always love shots like this where it's the character like turned around. I always think that these look super sick, and I really like this full power art as well. I think they did an absolutely amazing job with it. I really like the way that the aura looks as well. Now, what's really interesting about JIREN as well, before we take a look at these animations, is that we have not actually had a new full power JIREN card since 2020, which is 4 years ago, which is kind of insane to think about considering that we have gotten some UI Goku cards between now and then. And obviously, JIREN being basically like the end villain, quote unquote, for Dragon Ball Super, it's kind of crazy that he really doesn't have that many cards in the game. If we look at like JIREN on all of the cards that are in the game for him, it's basically just the STR one, the LR, and then the free-to-play tech one that you get from the Dokkan event. So kind of crazy that my man is finally getting a new card after this long, but I am pretty excited about it as well. After we take a look at JIREN's animations, I do actually have the animations for that tech JIREN pulled out, because you will probably notice when you're watching the new JIREN's animations that some of the animations for him look a little bit familiar, because it seems like they kind of took some of the scenes that they used for Tech JIREN and tweaked them a little bit. By the way, as per usual, links to everything will be in the description below. But let's go ahead and take a look at everything first. So As I always like to preface these videos, I am by no means an animation professional or an animator or anything like that. I just take a look at these Dokkan animations quite frequently for videos as well. Obviously, looking at the assets for these, I understand how these animations work, and I have a pretty good idea of what makes a good animation and what makes a stinky one. And speaking of stinky one, well, these are not that. It's kind of an interesting little conundrum that I had watching these animations, because I gotta be honest with you, I'm kind of very mixed. First of all, it doesn't help that obviously when it comes to these videos, I always have to kind of try and push my bias aside for the character, because it's like, even if I'm a fan of the particular character unit, I still have to be like, well, you know, I have to be obviously objective in the way that I take a look at these animations. And obviously, I am a fan of JIREN, and of course I'm excited that we're finally getting a new card after this long. But I gotta say, I am a little bit disappointed. Not in this part, though. This is easily the best part of the animation. I really, really like the way that this looks. Oh my gosh, so cool. It's more like, I don't think that these animations are bad, necessarily, right? Like, I'm not looking at these and going, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, right? Like, this is the worst thing in the history of the game, or something like that. No. It's more just like, they're not great, and they could have been better, right? It kind of feels like that they're very mediocre is the way to describe it, right? I think that they just feel very mediocre. They feel very in the middle. This KO screen is gas, though. When it comes down to things, right? I don't think that they're bad by any means, but I just think that they could have been a lot better, especially for a new JIREN after all this time. And it's kind of disappointing, because it's like, I would have loved for these to be on par with Goku, right? Because obviously some of Goku's animations were, you know, a little bit, you know, we talked about it in the animation analysis video. Some of them were a little bit lacking, and some of them were amazing. And it kind of feels like that this guy definitely does not compare to UI Goku in terms of the animations as well. Unfortunately, it definitely kind of seems that this guy feels like another one of those units to me that has basically been locked in the vault for a while, and then they just decided to release him now because he came, you know, or he's coming rather with a unit that makes more sense to release him with. That's not actually how the game works, right? That's just kind of the feeling that I get from some of these units when I'm looking at a character with animations that feel like they came out a few years ago, right? It's unfortunate that that is the case, right? Because it would have been amazing to get, I was going to say amazing to get a JIREN with modern animations like those on par of this year's anniversary units, or even, you know, more equating to UI Goku's level of quality. But my PC crashed mid-recording, so that's great. Anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at JIREN's animations now. Obviously, later in the video zone, we'll take a look at the tech JIREN for the comparison, but let's go ahead. I hit the quality button rather than the playback speed. There we go. Let's go ahead and take a look at the animation. So, starting us off here, we have JIREN's 12 key super attack. First of all, I really, really like this beginning shot here where JIREN walks up. I think that that is animated very, very nicely. And to me, it also feels very much so the Tournament of Power art style. I will say, I do think that one thing that this unit does do pretty well, is always a little bit of tongue twister, huh? Is it captures the Tournament of Power art style pretty well, I would say. This definitely looks like the artwork from the Tournament of Power. So that is really, really cool to see. Now, I will say this cut is a little bit abrupt. They go from him standing there. I wish they kind of would have just zoomed normally into then bam, like he's just right there. It's a little bit weird. I'm never really a fan of when they do this in Dokkan, because it kind of feels like, the devs, I don't want to say this because it's like, since I don't know, you know, like, obviously what the devs are thinking, right? I can't read their minds, unfortunately, for this. I really wish I could sometimes. It kind of seems to me like it's just being lazy, or if not being lazy, more like cutting corners, so then they're, you know, they don't have to basically like put in as much effort or something like that, or basically, you know, they can save time and focus on other animations, maybe would be the more appropriate thing to say, right? I feel like saying that they're cutting corners or being lazy is a little bit, you know, like too negative, honestly. But either way, though, yeah, this is definitely a little bit jarring. I think it also doesn't help by not only the fact that Jiren's do they have a similar sounding name? Kinda. Beerus and Jiren? No, not really at all. What am I talking about? Either way, though, obviously the pose change is a little bit jarring, but I think what's more jarring is there's a little bit more like shading on Jiren's muscles. So I think that kind of catches you off guard when it zooms in. I will say, I do think they did a pretty good job of keeping the ground somewhat consistent. It's definitely not the same between these two shots, but I feel like it's similar enough that like your brain doesn't really register that it's that much different, right? Moving on, though, we do have a nice little bit of movement as Jiren winds up. I will say, this part caught me off guard immediately as well. I know we're only 2 seconds in, but you'll see it when I point it out to you. So here, right, we have shading Jiren, and this looks like Jiren from the Tournament of Power, right? I think the line work and the shading look very, very similar to the artwork in the Tournament of Power. And then as he leans down, bam! What? So they take away how dark some of the shading is, and they take away the like thicker outlines on the character, right? Which I feel like the Tournament of Power art style is a lot more iconic with those thicker black outlines. This looks a lot more like a Dokkan asset. Like, it's kind of funny because I swear it's like, oh, they went from, like, using the anime art to changing it to an asset from Dokkan. Like, that's what this reminds me of more so. I know that's kind of funny to say, but if you've looked at the assets for as long as I have, I think you know what I'm talking about when it comes to how this looks, right? They also make, like, Jiren's head bigger and his body smaller between these two shots, which is really weird, if I do say so myself. His eyes also, like, change a little bit of shape. Like, I feel like they kind of change up his facial features a little bit weird. I don't know. Very strange. I'm not exactly sure why they did it like this and they didn't just keep it this art style, because I feel like if they would have kept it the art style like this, it would have been a lot more consistent looking and it would have looked a little bit better. I noticed this like right out the gate. Like, I feel like that's always a bad thing. When I notice something in an animation, like on the first watch, not to mention in this one's case, right? It's literally 2 seconds into the animation. I feel like that's not good. But either way, though, we have Jiren kind of move down here, right? Thankfully, the actual animation itself, like the movement, is pretty decent on Jiren himself. It's not too bad. It's just, again, this very weird, jarring thing that they did. You then have him dash forward, which they kind of cut between shots, so he's already off the ground. But I think that's okay, right? Not too bad. And it is kind of funny here. They actually, like, because of the way that Jiren's looking, his bulbous eyes, right, are kind of like completing the outline and the silhouette of his head there, whereas obviously here the little bit of like gray of his head is on the side. It's kind of weird to look at because it reminds you how much of it like an alien that Jiren really is. But right, I still think that it looks good overall, right? And you do have a move forward. Now this is a little bit disappointing though, I will say. It is basically just a static PNG. Also, I am so sorry if you could hear that. I haven't eaten anything today. Anyway, dude, this is just a PNG. And the thing of it is, I don't really know what else they would have done here, right? Because you know I always complain whenever in modern animations we use these static PNGs because we should be way past that point, right? There should not even be a single PNG that's just static in these entire things for multiple frames. Obviously, one frame is going to have a static PNG. That's how animation works. But, I mean, for stuff like this, right, there shouldn't be anything like this in modern animations. Now, my only thing is, though, how would they have even changed this? Because, obviously, he's jumping forward. Jiren doesn't really have any fabric to be flapping in the wind here yet, because, obviously, his shirt is not ripped. And he doesn't have any hair. Sorry, bald man. So, it's like, What would they do for the movement? I guess it would just be they would have to have his arms and his legs moving a little bit, right? That would be what would make this animation feel a little bit better to me. Even if it was just some really simple minimal movement, right? I think that would really bring it together, because they kind of try and disguise the fact that there's no movement here by having it get so close to the screen and having this like motion blur effect, like he's zooming towards the screen, right? They're just trying to make you not really see it, right? And then what's funny is that they get rid of the motion blur at the end, which I feel like honestly would have made more sense to keep it, you know, as he kind of falls through to the camera, right? I do like that they have the close-up of his eye, though. I do think that that is a pretty cool shot. And then we move on to this section here where he comes in and starts beating down Goku, right? Now, for this section, right, these punches and kicks are pretty simple, but I think they get the job done. They also have the funny tournament of power fighting when you can't see them in the middle of this, which is basically like those little, like, and then the little electricity, right, effects in the sky, which is cool that they included that, right? I believe that this was also in the UI Goku essay right before punching Jiren away. I think that this is very simple, right? Like, I don't think that this section of the animation is bad or anything like that. I feel like maybe it could have just been a little bit more close up if they wanted to do something a little bit, like, nicer looking. But I don't really think that the punches and kicks are bad. They're just very, very simplistic. They do a good job of keeping the shading up on Jiren, though, throughout this entire section, I will say. He does have some of that very nice tournament of power shading, while still kind of looking like a Dokkan sprite, but almost looking a little bit more like if Dokkan actually made the sprites into HD sprites, is kind of what it makes me think of. Either way, we have Jiren punch Goku away here with the little bit of the motion blur, and then of course we have the art. By the way, I will say another very interesting one. I think we've pointed this out in animation analysis videos in the past, by the way. Hydrate or dihydrate, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to the art, right, obviously usually they have the kind of like super attack background in the art, and they don't usually show like the actual card art background in the like super attack art when they kind of move the card art around like this. But they do for Jiren. They've done this a couple of times recently, and it's really interesting to see that they've done this. I don't really know why, or if this is something with like maybe the way that the card is coded and they don't intend for it to be like this, because they usually don't show like the entire card art. Let me see if we can find it here. Yeah, like this, right? Like here's a good example with this Jiren. For him, right? If we take a look at the, where's the card art here? If we take a look at the card art, right, you can see that he has the purple background, right? That's what his background would be for the actual card art. But then when we're looking at the super attack animation, he doesn't have the purple background there, right? It's basically more like the, you know, card and the effect, and then they have the little motion lines and the like pulsing effect. But they usually don't have the background in there, but they do for this one, which is kind of interesting. It makes it feel a little bit jarring almost, but I think it only is that way because it's like, well, if every card in the game was like this, then it wouldn't be so jarring, but it's just because the super attacks don't usually have the card art background in the, well, background. Either way, though, I really like this animation of the energy coming into Jiren's fist. I think this looks really cool. The way that it looks like actual ki and energy swirling inside. They definitely did a very good job with that. I really, really like the way that this looks. You obviously then have Jiren's light glow, which I will say they definitely did a good job on this. Let's go from like right here, right? Look at the aura around Jiren, right? It's really cool because it's moving very subtly, right? It's very hard to tell because obviously we're looking at it in such a slow motion like this, but by golly, they really cooked with it. Look at the like little bit of the aura moving around him, right? Very, very cool to see that they actually animated that. You can see it pretty well on that shot there. I'm trying not to slow it down, or well, rather, I guess go frame by frame for this because it's kind of hard for you to tell that it's moving in the frame by frame, especially when we have this full shot of Jiren. The aura is actually moving around, which is really, really cool to see. I honestly didn't expect them to do that because in the past with Jiren, when he's been in this, I'm not exactly sure what this state is called, when he's not full power Jiren yet, and he still has like the full Pride Trooper fit on, but he has like the red aura around him, right? It's like Jiren parentheses powered up or something like that. I don't really think that it has like a technical name, right? Because actually, in Dokkan, if we go to the Jiren disambiguous, did it not search? Bruh. Hello, Dokkan Wiki. There we go. If we go to this Jiren, right, in the animation for this card, and even in the card art, right, you can see that he has a little bit of the aura there, and in the actual like super attack, he has the same looking aura as well. But it's not like it's a different form or anything. It's kind of just like when Goku's in Super Saiyan and he powers up, so the aura is around him, and it's not just him standing there with the yellow hair. It's kind of the same thing, right? But either way, though, it's really cool that they actually put in that aura there. Definitely a fan of how that looks a lot. I like this little shot, by the way, of the establishing shot, too. This is way better. And this is what I'm saying. Like, I feel like in the beginning is an example of how Dokkan should not do, like, the transitional scenes and, like, characters moving and stuff like that. But this is a great example of it, right? You focus on Jiren's fist, and then they move down to his feet to show you him readying into stance. And then, when you get to here, you have Jiren readying up his pose, and it makes sense because you just saw his feet put him in this position, right? So there's not any like awkward change in pose here or anything like that, right? We talked about that in the UI Goku essays, where it kind of feels like they almost just threw a bunch of stuff together rather than it being more like a coherent animation, right? This is a good example of something that makes the animation feel a lot more coherent, because you're not like, okay, how did this character get into this pose when they were just over here like this, right? This is a very good example of how to do it right. Now, Jiren getting into this stance looks very, very good, right? Obviously with him with his fist out there. And then they have this little shot from the side with him basically throwing the blast forward, with him blasting the enemy into the rock. I do feel like that the shot from the back could have been a little bit better, in my opinion, right? I kind of wish that this shot right here looked a little bit better. But it's not terrible, right? At least the movement on Jiren actually putting his arm forward is pretty fluid. So I suppose it's kind of a non-complaint, but I still feel like they could have made the shot look a little bit cooler. But after the enemy is blasted into the rock, we then have the 18 key, which is interesting. That they kind of just end it there, but I guess that makes sense, right? Because they could have strung along more animations for that, but then I guess having him being like broken into the rock will also end up being like the KO screen basically for that too. Either way, though, I really like this first shot of the 18 key, I gotta be honest. Jiren looks super menacing here, first of all. They, like, carved my man's face into some Giga Chad type of face here. But also, once again, this type of art style feels a lot more reminiscent. I think it's his eyes. They, like, made them more triangular rather than, like, circular. Either way, though, for this particular shot here, right, it's really interesting because they go back to the same sort of shading that they had at the very beginning, right? That I was talking about how this right here, right, looks a lot more like the Tournament of Power art style and the Tournament of Power shading with like how, you know, dark the actual shading on the characters are and the thicker black lines and stuff like that, right? All of that art style, before we get to this, right, once again, I feel like is once again captured very well in the beginning of the 18 key super attack here, right? Looking at Jiren like this, you can see that once again the line work is very similar to that same Tournament of Power art style, the shading and everything like that. I think it looks really, really good. I have to point out this stuff because even though, you know, I think that these animations aren't necessarily stellar, obviously I feel like even with animations that aren't as good as some of the top tier ones in the game, or even just are kind of mediocre, it's still important to point out the good things that they do, right? Because obviously, since they are mediocre, that means that they're not bad, and they certainly do some stuff good, right? So I think that it's still important to point out stuff like that, even if the animations aren't necessarily the best, right? Now, either way, moving on from that, right, we have Jiren. Bro, it's definitely been hitting the Giga Chad workout because that squat was crazy. Oh my gosh, dude. I can feel my legs cracking looking at that. Holy cow. So we have Jiren obviously squatted down before he jumps up. I will say, I do kind of feel like they could have done a better job on the jumping animation. Usually I don't say that about Dokkan animations because I feel like they do a pretty decent job of it, but Jiren jumping up in the air here looks a little weird. Like, I think it also doesn't help that they use for one, static PNG once again. This kind of reminds me of like an old Astro Boy cartoon. If you're familiar with what I'm talking about, like how those old Astro Boy cartoons look, where it's just like one like PNG of them basically sliding Astro Boy across the screen for him to fly. That's kind of what this reminds me of. Why do they not have more movement on these? This isn't like something that they did in animations from like years and years and years ago. I don't know, it's just so strange to me that they would include this in a modern 2024 SA. This feels like something that could have been like when Tech Jiren came out. This section of the animation, I feel like, is something that could have been seen in an animation from them. I don't know. Kind of weird, right? It also doesn't help that we go from this like absolutely beautifully crafted asset here, right, where it's basically Jiren in this like perfect tournament of power art style, to what on God's green earth is that? This is a certified stinky sprite moment if I have ever seen one, ladies and gentlemen. Holy moly. That is a stinky sprite right there. Like, literally, I think that may actually just be a little bit more of an upscaled version of one of Jiren's sprites that they have on his sprite sheet. That is such an ugly looking sprite. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that is definitely a big no-no from me. Why would they include this in a modern day summonable unit is beyond me. This feels like a shot that would be in like a free-to-play unit, right? I don't know. Either way, though, moving past that, we then move on to this shot from behind. And again, so jarring because once again, Jiren looks amazing here, right? Again, the shading, the line work, it looks so nice, right? How do we go from that stinky, disgusting sprite to this, bro? I don't know. Either way, moving from that, Jiren obviously moves forward towards Vegeta here. It's kind of cool that they actually changed the sprites between Goku and Vegeta. And then we basically have another barrage of attacks from Jiren, right? We do get a little bit of first-person-ish kind of Jiren action with the arms coming into play here. And I feel like this section really isn't too bad, to be honest with you. I really like the way that Jiren looks there, by the way. I really hope that somebody does a rebuild of that shot, because Jiren looks awesome there. It's so funny. I really like when they draw his head, like his forehead super big and his eyes like a little bit smaller in the anime, because I feel like it almost makes him look more menacing or something like that. It makes him look more like bulky or dude, bro. I don't know how to describe it really. But either way, though, I feel like this section right here where he kind of comes in to punch them is okay, right? It's not too bad, though I will say I do feel like the punch lacks a little bit of impact would probably be my only complaint here. However, the punches look a little bit better once you actually get to the close-up shot here. And when we have Jiren teleport behind, I do really like the pose that he hits there. I kind of wish that this would be a little bit more of a close-up shot so we could actually get a better look at this pose, because I actually quite like it. I think it looks really good. And then the key would be, once he transitions here, right, this is the thing that I wanted to look at quite a bit. So let's go back and make sure that we can see it behind Vegeta's aura there. So Jiren's legs are kind of folded up, right? His arms are out to his side. And then once we transition here, it's a similar pose, but I feel like it's not similar enough, especially with the angle of Jiren's head. I feel like they definitely could have done a better job making this a little bit more of a fluid transition, because Jiren is looking directly at Vegeta, and then when we transition into this shot, it kind of looks like he's looking forward off to the side of the screen, right? As well, his body isn't tilted like it is here, right? His, what would that be? His right arm? Yeah. His right, wait, no. Our right, his left. Yeah. Our right, his left should be a lot higher in the air, right? As you can see in comparison. And the other arm should be a lot more down. His legs are kind of in the same position. It's kind of hard to tell. Well, actually, hold on. Let's move forward a couple of frames. How is his leg? Okay, no. His legs are pretty much in the same position. So it's similar enough, but I don't know. I feel like maybe to the non-well-trained eye, it probably won't be that big of a deal. But I know me looking at this, I'm like, I feel like they could have just tilted him a little bit more, and it would have solved the issue I have. However, once again, the punch, It does look very cool, but again, I kind of feel like it lacks a little bit of impact. Though again, I do like this shot of Jiren with his fist out, and they actually do have a little bit of follow-up on this finally, right? As you can see, once Jiren actually punches Vegeta, his fist moves a little bit backward, right? Which is cool to see, because again, that's what makes these animations feel a lot more lifelike. And I really like the camera angle here where it kind of twists away. I wish they would have lingered on this shot a little bit longer, because I feel like the camera twist is not on screen long enough for how cool it is, right? They transition into then this more way boring shot of Vegeta flying towards the ground, and then once again PNG of Jiren just like sliding down basically, with the little bit of the effect on his hand, right? I really wish they would have lingered on this shot a little bit more, because it's so cool and it's a lot more interesting than what comes next. I wish that they would have had it be on screen for a little bit longer. But yeah, you then have Jiren descend once again. I wish that they would have had a little bit more animation on this. It also doesn't help, you know what would have been perfect for this? If Jiren would have put his other foot down, right? Because it that sounds so funny out of context. Jiren, you need to put your foot down. It's bad enough. As you can see here, right? When Jiren's coming down, his legs are kind of in still a little bit of a similar position to what they're in before, but it's almost like he's landing on one foot, right? And then the implication would be like that little, like, you know, white splotch that's there is like his other foot that's kind of like curled behind his body, right? It kind of seems like what should happen here is Jiren would land with one leg and then he put his other foot down, right, to plant his feet on the ground. But no, he never actually lowers his other leg to the ground, so it feels a little bit awkward, because then that means Jiren is literally standing on the side of this rock like a ballerina. So I don't know. I wish that they would have animated that, because honestly that would have made this feel just a lot more fluid, even with that simple little addition. But we then show the card art once again, and we then move on to this shot, which I will admit does look really good. We have some very nice shading on Jiren. I love the lighting on here. I love the way that the Ki Blast works. I will say the only thing that is a little bit jarring about this shot, I'll have to find the exact frame that they sort of transition it. There it is. I see you. You can't hide from my eyes. Right here. Why do they do this? I feel like they should have just kept Jiren looking the same as he does right here, because this looks a lot more accurate to how I remember. And then we get scrunched, a little bit less muscular Jiren. Like, it's so weird that they change the, like, musculature of him and the way that his face looks midway through this. I know that this is not a new thing in Dokkan, right, where I've seen this before, but usually the reason why they do this is because they're transitioning between like a far away asset and a closer up asset. So then that way, right, like the far away asset's getting a little too blurry, and then the, you know, close up asset is in there. Or sometimes they do a little bit of a funny and they reverse it, where for some reason they have the far away asset second and then they have the closer up one first, which always doesn't make sense to me. But regardless, my point is, why would they do this for this? Because this whole shot is pretty consistent. I guess it's because then when they like zoom out, Jiren gets a little bit more farther away, and they wanted to do, this is almost like rotoscoping, I guess, as the camera really like pans away from Jiren, right? Because it kind of looks a little bit more like 3D-esque, right, as it's moving away from him, because he kind of looks a little bit more like a 3D object rather than just like a 2D PNG standing there charging the blast. I do like the way that the camera angle and everything is executed on this, though, even though we have that little bit of a funny change of the assets there. I really like the way that this looks, right? In the way that like the camera pulls back. I think this is a super cool angle, and honestly I can't really think of another shot in Dokkan that is specifically shot like this, to be honest. I actually really like the way that this shot is executed, but once again, dude, why is it so short? Like, we're watching this in the, you know, slower speed, and let's go on from the card art. Look at how long this shot lasts for. You have Jiren there, which is cool, and then this is where the movement begins, right? Okay, and then the camera starts speeding up here, and then bam, it's cut off. Does it not feel like that it should be a little bit longer, right? Or they should at least, like, have the camera pan out just a little bit more. It feels so jarring in the way that it cuts. I wonder why with this animation. It feels like there's a couple of different scenes where they feel like that they should be longer, but they just aren't. Either way, though, we then have this little bit of the faraway shot of Jiren charging the blast at Vegeta, right? Before it basically just flies forward and encompasses the entirety of him before we have this gigantic blast on the screen, right? I don't think that there's anything wrong with this end bit here, though I will say this part after the very HD Jiren, right, does feel a little bit weird because it's just kind of like the circle growing. Granted, they do have the effect around it, but they basically just like make the ki blast circle like really big. Like, I guess this is what happened in the anime, but I don't know, it just looks a little bit weird. They do a good job at least of the lighting, right? Where this is coming into frame, you can see that it seems like the screen gets a little bit more orange, right, as this is kind of coming through. I guess that could also just be, you know, your eyes kind of being tricked by, you know, you thinking that, but because, you know, like the orange ball is covering the whole screen. But I don't know, either way, it kind of looks like there is a little bit of slight orange lighting to me once the ball actually gets to this part. Either way, though, we now move on from Jiren's base animations. But before we do, I know a lot of people have been talking about these animations look a lot better in 2x speed, and this is something that I occasionally do in these animation analysis videos, but I think I want to make this more of like a recurrent? I'm not exactly sure the correct usage of the word on that. But either way, I want to watch the animations in 2x speed for sure, because I definitely want to see them look in the 2x speed, right? How they look, to see if they kind of fare any better. I am still always of the opinion that I think if an animation looks bad in 1x speed, it's still bad. Like, I think the fact that, oh, it looks better in 2x speed, like, yeah, sure. But, like, you know, speeding up a YouTube video, right? Like, you know, okay, so it looks better in 2x speed. I don't know. It just seems a little bit silly to me, right? Like, I get it because you're going to be watching the animations more so in 2x speed. But I feel like if the fundamentals are bad, that just means that it's bad overall. You know what I mean? Either way, let's go ahead and take a look at this in 2x speed. I think that definitely the punches and kicks fare a lot more better in 2x speed animations, right? Let's see this part. Yeah, I don't know. I guess they look a little bit better in 2x speed, right? I still think that the problems that I had with them are obviously still there. I think it is always definitely, whenever it comes to these, I think it's especially the, like, farther away shots when characters get punched that tend to look a little bit better, right? And the punches that feel like they don't have as much impact, you know, lend themselves a little bit better in 2x speed, only because then you kind of don't notice the impact lacking as much because it just happens so fast, right? Now, this animation will not be in 2x speed, the next two animations that we're going to look at, because obviously these are animations where characters are talking, so we don't have any 2x speed shenanigans to take a look at here. But we have this, which is the activation of the standby skill. This is a really weird animation, dude. This is a really weird animation, man. So I can't wait until we get a Dokkan versus anime comparison for this video, because I really want to know what the heck they thought they were cooking with this. This feels like a weird, like, in-between shot from an anime that they decided to use, like, as the main animation. So I don't really think that there's anything, like, wrong with it necessarily. It's just kind of weird in the way that it's executed. So you have Jiren appear on screen, right? And he looks normal, right? Bro's basically just standing there. This shot looks a little bit cursed because his head hasn't his head hasn't turned at all for the asset until here when they finally turn it. I will say this shot does look pretty cool of him kind of like with his head cocked to the side like this. But they basically just have him like turn his body around. I will say I do appreciate that they at least took the time to like make it look like he's taking a step rather than basically just essentially having him float in a circle, right? Because you can see that his like body kind of bobs up and down a little bit in him turning around, right? So it's cool that they animated that to make it look like that he's actually, you know, like moving properly. But why do they fade to black? I know he's turning around because I believe this is a reference to the scene where, you know, he like turns around from Goku and Vegeta and he's like, warrior sleep, you know? So like, I get that, but why do they fade to black and then have this animation appear of him like now standing there? Like, why didn't they just... This is the one time that I feel like a fade away to black really doesn't work. Like, why did they not just cut to this? You know, with him then standing there? I don't really know. It feels a little bit strange to me. Like, am I out of left field here? It just feels really jarring going from this to then this, right? We of course then have Jiren basically just crossing his arms here, which like this particular shot, there's nothing wrong with it, right? Like the asset looks nice. Again, we got a very nice Tournament of Power art style going there, but it's just him standing there. And then they, again, like, instead of just zooming in and funny enough doing the thing that I feel like would have worked better here, where they, you know, have this asset that's a little bit farther away, but this one still looks really good quality, right? And then when they're zooming in, they just, like, cut to Jiren's face. Like, why don't they just zoom in? I don't know. This whole animation is just really jarring. Also, I feel like the way Jiren's head looks so much more like him here compared to here. Like, his face looks a lot more flat or something here. Like, it looks a lot more, like, rounded and, like, 3D in this shot. And then here it looks a lot more, like, flatter. I don't know. It also looks, like, thicker. Like, I swear they made his neck bigger. They definitely made his neck bigger and his head bigger. I don't know. This whole animation, like, just feels very off to me, personally. I don't think that, like, the actual animation that's there, once again, I don't really think that there's anything wrong with it, necessarily. Let's watch this in the regular speed for this one. I don't really think that there's anything wrong with it. It's just jarring and strange. Let me know what you think in the comments about this one, because I'd be curious to hear what you have to say. And then, of course, at the very end of this, we have Jiren do the funny sleep. I do kind of think this is a huge missed opportunity, though, excuse me, to cut to, like, the black background with Jiren basically, like, sitting in the air, floating and meditating with the red aura around him. I feel like this is a huge missed opportunity to have the standby skill be that, because that's kind of what it feels like it should be, right? With him, like, obviously he then closes his eyes. The animation of him closing his eyes is actually really good, I will say. They did a very good job on that. But yeah, like, I don't know. That's kind of what it seems like the implication of the standby skill is to me. That, you know, he's then, like, you know, conserving his energy for later in the fight. And maybe it's just because, like, you know, this is what it's supposed to be, rather, right? Whereas you can see this is, like, the standby skill Jiren, where, funny enough, his eyes are even closed here, and he's basically just standing there with his eyes closed, right? So if they wanted to make it the standby skill of him, like, basically sitting there meditating, I feel like then they would have had to also edit the card art to be that, too. Because then, obviously, that would have made a little bit more sense. And to be fair, I guess by this point in the tournament, I don't remember exactly if he hits that pose once again. You know, where he basically, like, is doing the meditating where he's floating in the air sitting there. Because obviously that was in the beginning of the tournament, right? Before he actually started fighting. But I don't remember if he returns to that, or if when he's basically like, yeah, I'm not going to fight you two. You two are too weak to fight me. If he basically just stands there like this. I guess that must be what happens in the order of the events, if this is how it is in Dokkan. But you can remind me in the comments once again. Either way, though, I feel like it's a little bit of a missed opportunity to kind of like have something a little bit more exciting when it comes to the standby animation here. But either way, though, we then have Jiren's transformation from the standby skill, right? I believe this would be a transformation finish skill. Definitely correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that that's what this is, technically. It's so hard to keep up with all the different types of skills that Dokkan has at this point. But either way, though, it is a transformation, you know, that comes from the standby skill. We have Jiren charging up his ki, right? Which looks pretty cool with the little rocks flying everywhere, right? Obviously, we then cut to, or well, not cut, there's a white flash, rather, excuse me. And, bro, I will say, this is probably the only shot that I'm gonna say, what the? This is kind of gross looking, I'm not gonna lie. This could have been executed a little bit better. I'm not gonna lie to you. This could have looked a little bit better. Maybe they should have just kept the screen on white for a couple more seconds, because I don't want to see this horrifying Jiren face ever as long as I live. It's kind of funny too, because it isn't even on the screen for that long. It is quite literally like only there for this like fraction of a second, until in the like next moment it transitions into Jiren's head being like thrown back, basically, like this, right? Which is then what is there when you can actually see it in the full view, once the like white goes away. So I kind of feel like they didn't even need this frame in here. Like, it's funny that I swear sometimes with Dokkan, like we were kind of talking about before, they like cut corners or like they do measures to like save time on certain animations and stuff like that. But then in opportunities where they don't need to do something extra, they do. And sometimes that's a good thing, because then it just makes the animation cooler. But this is a shot where it's like quite literally like the artists, like, I don't know, maybe this is, I don't know if this is mean to say, but like the artists just wasted their time because they didn't need the shot. No one's going to see this frame that is quite literally here for 2 frames. 1, 2. Yeah, 2 frames is how long this is on the screen. They could have just had it cut to this shot. Like, I don't know. It just seems like, hey, maybe if the shot in the beginning, you know, could have had a little bit more time to it, and they could have taken away that stinky Jiren face, that would have been a good exchange. You know what I'm saying? Regardless, though, we then have Jiren shouting to the heavens here, which is cool that he actually does open his mouth a little bit wider, right? It does look a little bit funny, but obviously it's just because it's the angle. This shot does look really good, though, with obviously Jiren stanced up back there, and the aura looks so cool, if I do say so myself. The very fiery aura. Obviously, this is also very reminiscent. Oh, LMAO, I accidentally did that. This shot right here, I believe is actually also what was the like Dokkan event teaser for the original STR Jiren, if I'm remembering that correctly, where he's like, you know, kind of like towards the back and he's powering up like this, which is really cool. But either way, we then transition into this shot where Jiren is powering up. You have the energy basically ripping off his shirt. You have these awesome fire effects. Once again, showing Jiren now with his shirt ripped off, right? The flames enveloping him into a shadow, which is really cool. And then you have basically the entire screen be covered by Jiren's energy before they transition into this amazing setup here, showing these different parts of Jiren's body. Oh my gosh, this is such a cool execution for this to really emphasize, look at this absolute behemoth that you are about to fight. Jiren looks amazing in every single one of these shots, especially this one. Oh my gosh, dude. Look at him! He's so cool! Now, the one thing that I will say is I think that this entire animation is really good, right? I don't really have any qualms, to be honest with you, besides the weird, stinky Jiren face, with this animation, right? I think that this looks really, really good, right? Now, you may have noticed this. Let's watch this in normal speed real quick. You may have noticed this, right, when we were looking at it in slow time speed, and even just in normal speed when you were watching this animation. Yeah, by the way, that before we talk about what I was just about to say, the stinky Jiren face that's there, I can now see it like the one frame that it's there. Like, I swear, it's like a jump scare, like a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare. You can see it there for like 2 seconds. It makes the animation feel less fluid. I swear they should have just had his head tilted back and not had that face in there. It would have looked a little bit better, because it's one of those things where like you blink and you miss it. You're like, wait, was that there? Did I just imagine Jiren's full face there? So weird. Either way, right? I feel like this entire transformation animation looks really good, if I do say so myself. Like, I don't really have any problems with it, besides the fact that I think you can notice even in the regular motion, because obviously this will be only in 1x speed because of the transformation animation, Jiren's aura is like lagging or something like that. Like, the aura itself looks really good. Like, if you pause on any of these frames and any of these shots, like, Jiren's aura is incredible looking, right? They did such a good job with the animation here, right? And they kind of got a couple of the different, like, styles of the aura represented here. You have this ridiculously bright, oversaturated red from when he just finishes powering up, which is really, really cool, right? You have this where it's almost kind of like a little bit more like fiery energy, right? That's kind of like coming off of him, which looks really, really good. It's also interesting because I swear like the asset for the energy almost looks a lot more low quality than Jiren himself, but I almost think that that kind of works for the way that the energy looked in the anime, to be honest with you. And obviously, Dokkan has to cut some corners in this regard because obviously they can't make the animations as HD as they want to because, of course, well, you know, this game is running on a now almost 10-year-old engine, basically. So either way, though, this shot, again, like all of the different little bits of Jiren's aura here in this close-up shot of his head, right, looks so good, right? Like, I don't think that there's anything to complain about in terms of the way that it looks, right? It's so good. Even the little bit of, like, the little white, like, outline they have on in there, right? And they have his clothes moving. Thank you, Dokkan. Appreciate it. Here, they have a little bit of like the red energy like strands, I guess you would call them, like coming over his chest, right? They have obviously the little like bits of the fire around him. They have the like white energy again, like spiraling around him, even like the flames in the background. Like visually, it's a spectacle. It's amazing, right? But it looks like it's lagging. Like, there it looks okay, right? When it's just Jiren's feet in the beginning, it's not too bad. But then every other shot after that, it kind of looks like there's not enough frames of the aura, or like they were trying to like make it slow or something like that. Like, I don't really know. Like, I don't really think it looks like terrible. It's just a little strange, I guess. Let's look real quick in the slow speed again, because when we slow it down, you can really notice the difference, right? Here, once again, it looks okay, but it's still not like as spectacular as it could be. But here's where you really start to notice it, right? Especially compared to the clothes flapping. I think that that's a great comparison here. If you look at how much the clothes are flapping in the wind, and the consistency and the fluidity of them compared to how laggy the aura looks in the exact same shot, I feel like that really gives you an idea of how laggy the aura seems to be in these shots, right? I'm not really sure why they did it this way. You can let me know in the comments if you have any thoughts about it. I'd love to hear it because I think it's really interesting. Also kind of interesting they didn't do the edges of Jiren's gloves flapping in the wind, but they did his ripped shirt. Huh, interesting. Either way, though, I really like this animation. This is definitely one of those things where when you see people talk about this unit, this is going to be the screenshot that you see. I promise you. This may even be the thumbnail, to be honest with you, because this shot is just chef's kiss. You know what I'm saying? All right. So let's now move on to the 12 key for the boy. So we start off with this shot right here. First of all, I will say this is pretty cool that they implemented this, because this is like a sort of antithesis to Goku, I believe would be the correct word to use for this. Because Goku also has a shot like this in his super attack where he's staring down Jiren and you see Goku's foot for a second and you see, you know, Jiren, which will be the enemy sprite, but obviously in the video is Jiren, right? you see Jiren in the distance, which obviously happens in the anime, but it's cool that they kind of made these cards like basically like dueling each other, almost like they actually are fighting each other, just like in the anime, which is really, really cool. I definitely like it when they do that. You have these shots, I will say, these far away shots. I don't think there's anything wrong with Jiren here. Even his aura looks really good, but having Goku float in the air feels a little bit weird. I feel like he should be on the ground, because I think he is on the ground, but I guess maybe they just wanted to make it more accommodating for all the sprites. But I don't know why they couldn't have just had him like, they could have just, you know, shifted the PNG down and had him like standing on that rock in the distance. And then for here, they could have just like literally put a boulder behind where his feet are angled, right? So it just looks like he's standing on the rock. I don't know. It feels a little bit jarring that he's flying in the air, but also I don't think that's really Jiren's fault. It's definitely more of a stinky sprite moment, even though it's not really like the sprite's art style that's the problem. You know what I'm trying to say here. Regardless, though, this shot looks cool. Obviously, you have the fire everywhere, which looks really good. You then have Jiren charge forward here, right? Blasting forth, which I will say, you probably recognize this animation right here with Jiren flying forward, because this is what they did for the Tech Jiren super attack. I believe that would be, yeah, the beginning of the 12 key super right here, right? You can see that they have it where, bam, he flies forward. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different in the Tech key, and we'll rewatch the 12, or the 12 key, the Tech key, rather, the Tech key. Oh my gosh, the Tech animations. I'm losing my mind, I'm sorry. In a minute. But I just wanted to show you, if that shot right there looked familiar from Jiren's animations, right, it's because, you know, it's basically just the same as the Tech one. Also, another interesting thing to note in that regard, it does kind of feel like that this guy is almost like a little bit of an upgraded version of the Tech Jiren, right? So it does make me wonder if we will get another Jiren in the future. I don't know if Dokkan is preparing something big, or if they really just like teasing us. Because it feels like a lot of the time we get these animations that are either a little bit more lackluster, or it's like with characters that we've gotten animations for in the past. It kind of feels like that they take some of the animations that have already been in Dokkan and then sort of just like update them, I guess would be the best way to put it. But they don't use the new material, or I guess I shouldn't say the new material. Maybe I mean more so the new material to Dokkan itself, right? I guess I should say the other material that is available for the character, right? They don't use that a lot of the time in recent time when they've made updated versions of characters that we already have in game. They kind of use some of the animations from the original one and then give them a fresh coat of paint to have them match the more modern Dokkan style. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, are they doing this just in case? So then that way in the future, they can release another unit with the animations, you know, in the source material that we haven't really seen represented in Dokkan yet, like Jiren. Are they just doing this just because it's easier for them to kind of like take a look at what they did and just make a, you know, more updated version of it, right? Obviously, it's not like they're taking the assets from the original one or anything like that, but you understand what I'm trying to say, like using that as a reference point rather than coming up with something completely new, right? Is it because they have some grand plan to, you know, release a bunch of these units in the future, right? Like after 10th anniversary Dokkan, we're just going to get the most insane character releases you've ever seen, and finally all these animations that feel like they could have taken from this, that, and the other thing, right? We're finally going to get units with that type of stuff. I don't really know. Am I coping? Probably. But either way, it's just some interesting food for thought, that they wouldn't just use, you know, like the material that has not been represented, especially for Jiren yet, considering, like we took a look at before, right? We have like, what, 3 Jiren units in the game, something like that, right? I guess technically 4 now, 5 if you want to include the chain metal one, which we'll talk about him in a second. Oh boy. So this particular shot of Jiren charging forward, by the way, I don't really think that there's anything wrong with it. I do like the beginning part a lot, actually, where they kind of like have him, I don't even know how I would like describe this really. Like they have him basically just stance up, I guess, right? You have this shot of him very close up, and then, you know, they have him kind of swift or just like sweep his arm a little bit with a tiny bit of the motion blur, but I feel like it almost doesn't like make sense in the context of the shot. Like it's like, okay, he's moving his hand 2 inches. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a little bit jarring that they have the motion blur there. Like, I feel like it wasn't necessary. Also, the change here, it does happen really quick, so I guess that's not that big of a deal. But I do kind of wish that there was another frame or two in between the transition between these two poses. But I digress, right? I think that this little bit of having Jiren be close up before they then move out does look pretty cool. Right? Obviously with him way, way, way in the background, and then you have him move forward. I will say the movement on him is kind of a little bit weird. I don't really think that it's too bad, though. I'm sort of just nitpicking, to be honest with you. But it does feel a little bit funny in the way that he kind of, like, shifts around. But then we have this shot right here of Jiren giving Goku the beatdown, which does look pretty cool, if I do say so myself. And funny enough, once again, right, with this shot right here, we then go to basically what came next with the Tech Jiren, right? By the way, look how long his arm looks here. It's so funny looking. But it's interesting that they included some stuff in between, right, this time, where rather than him just basically, like, punching Goku directly, they have these quick punches and kicks, right, before they then have his fist buried into Goku's chest, right, with him then readying another punch. We will look at this in 2x speed in a second, because I do think that even though these punches are a little bit slow, they don't look bad in the slower speed, actually, because I feel like these punches are meant to be a little bit more, like, methodical, almost, in the way that Jiren moves the punches and kicks, right? Where they're, like, super hard-hitting, and they're not meant to be, like, rapid-fire. Yeah, 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 yeah. You know, it's like, boom, boom, boom. Really trying to give Goku the beatdown, right? Either way, though, I really like the way that Jiren moves here. The animation that they have on him, like, kneeling down after he's already hit Goku is super fluid. I really, really like the way that this looks. It's super nice looking. Jiren's expression is super great, too. And obviously, we have the little air effects before we have the energy kind of zoom into the punch and then explode outward to shoot Goku away before we transition into the card. I actually really like that art, I'm not going to lie. This is super cool, by the way. I do still think that they could have added a couple more frames in between some of the poses here, but I do really like the way that Jiren looks here. I think that they did a very good job representing the way that full power Jiren looks as best as they could. It is a little bit of a shame, again, because Dokkan is such an old game. This could look a little bit more HD, because I think with animations like this, it's clear to see in terms of, like, the visual quality of, you know, the assets at play here. Dokkan's, you know, like, age is definitely starting to show a little bit, but the shading on everything looks fantastic. I really, really like the lighting effects. I don't think that this pose change is that bad, right? But we have Jiren move his arms, which is okay, but then this to this, I feel like there should be a little bit more in between there. And then obviously, with him then getting his arms backwards, right, going from here to here, I feel like maybe there could have been something. It's also because you notice it a little bit more because Jiren's back, excuse me, is so, like, darkly shaded. And then you go to here, right, where it feels a little bit more bright. Either way, though, we then zoom out and have Jiren basically throw the blast immediately, which I think does look pretty good, right? Even though this is basically like a really quick change of the pose right here, right? When he brings his arms, like, back. Let's go back to that real quick. Bada boom, bada boom. It's so hard to get, like, pausing in between, right, you know, in the frames that I'm looking for here. There we go. So obviously his arms are, like, kind of back, but then you see him really ready to throw the blast. I feel like this is actually okay. Granted, it's a little bit weird because his aura sort of disappears a little bit. It's still there, but it's not, like, as intense, I guess. But maybe it's just because he's moving around and he's shifting. But I feel like this works a lot better for a quick pose change because this is something that would be quick and snappy, right? It's like the implication that Jiren's wind-up was so fast that you, like, basically didn't even see it, right? So I think that this works fine, actually, for, you know, how fast this pose changes. But then you have this little backup shot, and bam, Jiren throwing it forward is actually pretty fluid, and I think they have the right moment to, you know, have it be a little bit more snappy in the movement when he literally, like, whips his arm forward and then extends his arm outward immediately. I think that they did a pretty good job on that animation overall. And then, of course, you have all these crazy explosions from Jiren's rapid fire blast. I will say it's kind of interesting that some of the explosions look a little bit, like, dark. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like the Ki Blasts look kind of basic, too. They look very Dragon Ball Super Ki Blast, I have to say, unfortunately. They don't really look like they have a lot of life to them. But They're not too bad, and again, I think it is pretty close to the source material as far as I remember. But yeah, the explosions being a little bit dark is kind of interesting because then they still have some brighter explosions in the front. I feel like the only thing that they could have changed is if they would have had some more brighter explosions, because they have a couple even in the beginning of when the blasts are first getting shot, but they really only then appear once again towards the end. So I don't know. I feel like having a couple of these circles be a little bit more brighter would have given a little bit more like... how would I describe this? Like, just a little bit more of a dynamic look, I guess, to the animation, right? Either way, though, I don't think it looks bad, necessarily. And real quick, I do actually want to watch through the 12 key with you, just so that you can see the comparison between the two, right? And we'll watch it also in 2x speed on the new one as well. But you can see, yeah, it is basically like the same material that they are sort of referencing, but they do it a little bit differently. Obviously here, though, it's not the rapid fire blast. They have this just one long, you know, basically blast that comes out of JIREN's hand, which I think that the new one on like a fundamental level is definitely a little bit better in terms of like the way that the full execution is. But I have actually seen some people saying that they kind of like the tech one better, and I honestly can't blame them. It feels a little bit more fluid, maybe? I don't know. I think I like the idea behind the new one a little bit more with like just the way that it's executed, but I think the fluidity of the tech one and the simplicity of it kind of honestly works a little bit better for it, if I'm being honest with you. Let's go ahead now and look at that animation actually in 2x speed real quick, and then we'll move on to JIREN's 18 key super, and then we'll look at the rest of the Tech One's animations for a little bit of comparison there, because I want to see how this looks in 2x speed. Let's see. Yeah, so you have everything. Yeah, see what I mean? It looks a lot more like rapid fire now that we look at it. And yeah, it feels super quick when you're looking at it like this, right? I feel like definitely a lot of the things that are like little nitpicks that I have kind of disappear a little bit more in the 2x speed because you're just not noticing them, but it doesn't mean that they're not there. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's definitely a little bit of like a gray area for me. Regardless, though, not bad, I would say. Again, I don't think that any of these animations are necessarily bad. All right, so now we move on to the 18 key. So, this is the one that everybody's been talking about for one specific reason. And I'll show you why in about 5 seconds. But I like the aura in the beginning. I think this establishing shot of JIREN standing there is really nice. I like the way that he kneels down here. I think this animation is really, really good, right? Nothing to complain about here. I like the shading on JIREN as well. But here is where the problem comes through, ladies and gentlemen. This JIREN asset right here may look a little bit familiar to some of you in the audience who are fans of Dokkan's most fantastical game mode, Chain Battle. And that's because this is Chain Battle JIREN right here. That's right. Now, a lot of people have been making this comparison, right? Where this is the art for the Chain Battle boss JIREN, right? And you can see that it is indeed the same art. Now, whether some small minimal tweaks have been made to it is definitely up for comparison, because you can see obviously it's not like exactly in the same position because it's right here, right, rather than like, you know, in the middle of the screen. But it definitely looks like that the proportions of the head and like the angle of the head have maybe been changed a little bit, as well as like, oops, sorry, where JIREN's like, what would that be, his right arm? Yeah, I feel like his right arm, too, is a little bit different. But it is definitely mostly the shading that I think kind of gives off that effect. Because obviously in the card art version of him, the shading isn't really as present, right? Like there's still shading on him, but it's not as dark as it is here, right? With obviously like these very heavy shadows. A lot of people have been saying, man, this really stinks. Because it really feels like they should have just made something more original for this. It's kind of funny because I swear we don't see Chain Battle assets reoccur too often in Dokkan, whether that be in animations or obviously they don't use them for any other bosses in the game. It was really just for Chain Battle, which it's like kind of a double-edged sword because I guess it's like, oh cool, you know, like they're finally using these assets for something, but it's like, well, they're being used to kind of cut corners and, you know, not have to do as much work on making something new to give us something a little bit more fresh, right? Looking at this too, I guess at least the bare minimum, if they are going to do something like this, I guess at least it looks okay, right? But again, it is once again some sliding PNG shenanigans, which should not be present in modern Dokkan. Like, this just does not look good. Like, the asset itself is fine, right? Like, the JIREN, like, PNG looks nice, but the actual animation looks not good. Like, this looks like, what this looks like to me, right? It doesn't look like a Dokkan animation in terms of them trying to mimic the anime. It kind of reminds me of when people animate manga panels, and even that is usually done better than how this looks, right? This looks like when somebody takes a manga panel and they like kind of cut the character out from the panel, and then they sort of like animate them to be moving, right? To make like an animated manga scene. That's kind of what this reminds me of, but it's just done not well. At least he has the aura moving around, I guess, right? But again, you can just clearly tell when you're looking at this that this is just a PNG that they're sliding around the screen and adding some dust and, you know, like impact effects to. And I feel like the problem with that is that it really takes you out of the animation. Because when you're watching Dokkan animations, right, I feel like I always like to make this sort of like difference between them when it comes to like stuff with these sliding PNGs and when the animation is a little bit more fluid. I feel like the difference, and I hope that people understand when I try and describe it this way, is that when you're looking at a good Dokkan animation that's nice and fluid and there isn't really anything too crazy to kind of point out about like inconsistencies like this or these sliding PNGs, it feels like you're just watching the character move across the screen. Like when I'm watching, you know, like AGL Broly, right? I'm watching AGL Broly attack Frieza, right? I'm not watching, you know, like a bunch of PNGs put together to make Broly attack the Frieza. I'm just make Broly attack the Frieza. You know, I'm not watching like, you know, a bunch of PNGs moving in tandem. I'm just watching Broly attack, right? Or with MUI Goku, right? With his transformation animation, or like the counter. I'm just watching Goku transform. I'm not watching a bunch of PNGs put together to make Goku transform, right? Or Gogeta, right? When I'm watching him fight Broly in like the STR Gogeta, I'm just watching Gogeta do his thing. But here, I'm not watching JIREN just fly forward for an attack. I'm watching a PNG of JIREN slide across the screen, right? So I feel like it's that little bit of immersion that you kind of lose when it comes to being able to really notice stuff like this that really makes these animations just lose a bunch of points in my book. And I think a lot of people's in general, right? Moving on from that, though, we have Goku and JIREN flying at each other. Once again, a little bit more sliding PNG action, but I feel like this will look a little bit better in the 2x speed, and not to mention also, it works a little bit better, I guess, for this shot, right? Especially considering the aura is still moving. I feel like here as well, there could also be a little bit more like movement. This kind of feels like flat in the way that JIREN moves here until the very end of like the extended limbs. I understand what they're going for with this shot is that it's kind of supposed to be like in anime when a character is flying, and it would kind of be like the cameraman is flying right in front of them and watching their movement in mid-air, right? And so the background is moving around them, and obviously they kind of try and simulate that with the rocks moving behind JIREN, but I feel like it still looks a little bit too stale for my taste. The one we get to the end, right? And also I feel like some of the like movement is not as fluid as it could be here, to be 100% honest with you. I feel like they could have animated some stuff, like going from this shot to this one, I feel like they could have had a couple more frames in between, especially. But once we get to this like elongated look for Jiren, I feel like this is really cool because obviously the whole thing is that it's supposed to be like his fist is super close to the camera, and obviously his other fist is really far away, so it gives you this kind of like illusion of the stretched body, right? But this looks really cool. I like this shot quite a bit. And then of course we have Jiren throw the punch forward, which I think the punch being thrown, actually this is perfect for where they should kind of cut between poses, because it looks a lot more fluid. But yeah, obviously Jiren throwing the punch towards Goku, and then of course we have these couple of punches here from the side, right? We then have him spin around and give Goku the old heel before kicking him away. We then transition into the card art once again. And after the final time the card art is shown, we have Jiren flying up in the air, which I actually really like this shot. And by the way, I feel like it works well here because you have Jiren already like in the air basically from his last attack. And you don't really notice as much of like the, I guess, quote unquote weird, like it's not really that weird, I guess, in this case in terms of like him changing the position that he's in. And also the card art kind of makes you like, okay, this feels a little bit more natural in the way that Jiren's moving, right? Either way, though, this shot is cool. We obviously get the zoom into Jiren's eye, and I really like that, with then obviously showing him firing the blast forward, right? With the blast then colliding with Goku, right? I feel like, as well, the blast in this shot, once again, this might just be, unfortunately, them referencing more Dragon Ball Super-esque ki blasts, but it doesn't feel as like animated. It's just basically just a line that is expanding, and here it's basically just a circle coming at the screen, right? Which is a little bit unfortunate. This shot does look pretty cool, though. Obviously Jiren's aura flared up, and then of course the OWARI da, right? And he crushes his hand to then have the blast collide with the enemy and explode against them, right? Definitely a very, very cool shot. I will say, I do kind of wish for that shot Jiren was drawn a little bit like, I don't know, more like he's still a behemoth, but I feel like his face could be a little bit better here. But again, that's like definitely a little bit of nitpicking on my part. However, I will say the end is really where we pick up some steam, ladies and gentlemen. This is such a cool transition. So the explosion comes towards the screen, right? And you have the fire, right, then kind of cover it. Obviously after the explosion is there for a moment, right? You have this PNG of the fire fly forward, and even though this is just, you know, again, bam, the PNG is on the screen, it feels a lot more natural, like it should be there, because of course the explosion is coming towards you, so then the fire would be while flaring up. And then you have the fire come across the screen and have it dissipate a little bit to show this shot of Jiren stanced up behind the flames with his aura and energy basically just like pouring out of him, which is really cool. The little bit of minimal movement as well on the like red, almost like smoky energy there too is so cool. And then the cut directly to the KO screen. I'm wondering if where this will end if you don't KO with this animation. Will it end here, or will it just end at the explosion? I'm kind of curious where it will actually end if you don't actually kill with this move. But I do kind of wish that there was a little bit more of a transition from this amazing shot right here to the KO screen. But it is still a decent cut, right? I feel like it's fine enough. And obviously, though this KO screen is very simple, it is very, very cool looking. I will say, it is kind of funny that for this, like, they obviously have Jiren's aura moving around him for the part where the KO is actually there, but then they stop the aura's movement, and one of the rocks in the background is still moving, even though the aura doesn't move anymore. Or actually, do they stop at the exact same time? Let me see. Yeah, I guess they stop at the exact same moment. I thought the rock moved for a little bit longer. It's kind of interesting, though, because I feel like I swear I've seen some KO screens where they don't, like, pause the character's movement. I've definitely seen ones where they do this, though, where, like, the character, like, you know, stops moving and, like, all the animation stops on the screen. But either way, a very cool KO screen. I'm glad that they included it because it's honestly just, like, a little bit of a cherry on top. Let's go ahead now and take a look at the animation in 2x speed, and then we will look at Tech Jiren's animations. So let's go ahead and see that 18 key. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, I think that this shot, yeah, very well executed there. I really like the way that the this looks in 2x speed, I will say. This, and then into this part where he closes his fist, for sure. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the 12 key animation, or I'm sorry, the 18 key animation. Then we'll look at the transformation. We'll look at that afterward. So, this was the 18 key for Jiren, right? Where he comes down, punches the enemy. So I think that this one is a little bit different than the 18 key. Yeah, I guess him jumping up there and then firing this is different. Or is the same, rather. I'm sorry. Yeah, I guess this is basically the same. It's kind of weird because I feel like the first part is different, but then the second half is what is like the similar animation, right? It's executed obviously differently in the what do you call it? New one. But you can definitely see that they take from the same reference for how the animation is actually executed here. Very interesting. I definitely see how people say that they like Tech Jiren's animations more. I feel like he kind of feels a little bit more fluid, to be honest with you, at least in his super attacks. Let's go ahead and take a look at the transformation just to see a little bit of comparison. Because obviously here it's kind of interesting because they don't show his shirt ripping because he's already technically full power the whole time. Yeah, they basically just make an updated version of this, right? Where they have it kind of like zoom into Jiren there, is essentially what they're doing. With like the close-ups of all of Jiren's faces for the transformation. Yeah, very interesting. I feel like I could honestly see people saying that they like this one more. Again, I kind of feel like there's still some modern aspects to the new Jiren. They're definitely not present with this one. And I feel like a huge difference between this one and the new one is that this one feels a lot more like Dokkan style in terms of the actual art style itself. And the new one feels a lot more like they're trying to mimic the Tournament of Power art style. But I do feel like there could be an argument made for some of the animation being a little bit more fluid for Tech Jiren. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section below for sure. Overall thoughts on Jiren before we end off on the UI Goku video for the end of this one. I'll also just double check and make sure while we're talking about this that iKevinX didn't upload the Jiren video yet. So, again, overall thoughts on the boy. I like these animations, right? I do. I am a fan of Jiren, so, you know, when it comes to, like, I've said this in the past, when it comes to animations, I always kind of try and separate, like, my enjoyment of animations for what they are from the, I guess, like, technical and analytical look that I like to take at these animations, right? Because obviously, I feel like even if an animation isn't the best, I can still enjoy it, right? Especially if it's a character I like or just for what it is, right? I can obviously still enjoy the animations, even if I don't think that they're necessarily the best on a technical aspect. And I feel like that's kind of the case here. I feel like there's a lot of things that they could have done to improve this Jiren's animations. There are a lot of cool shots in here, and there's a lot of stuff that they do really, really well. There are a lot of nice upgrades for the Tech Jiren, especially going back and watching those animations. It's clear that, you know, this guy definitely got a lot of different upgrades, especially in the, again, like the visual department with it looking a lot more like the anime. But I definitely think that this guy's animations could have been a lot better, right? I think that UI Goku definitely is a lot better than his animations, unfortunately, because I kind of would have loved for them to be on the same tier. Hopefully, we do get a new Jiren in the future again. I'm glad that this guy is good, though, right? I know that his kit is very, very good, so that is pretty good. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to think. Let me know in the comments section below what you think of this Jiren's animations. And let's go ahead and take a look at our final little bit for this video, which is iKevinX's comparison for the UI Goku. Hello, today is a new day, UI, but the rabbit comes first. Look at those after images. Yeah, so obviously I always like to look at Giad and iKevinX's videos for these because it's always interesting to see the, you know, like sometimes the differences in the things that they notice with some of the reference material. Hydrate or dihydrate, by the way. But obviously, I wanted to include this one in this video since we didn't get to take a look at it in the last one. So yeah, this is all pretty much like everything that I kind of expected here. Everything is pretty much the same. Okay, so... Oh, everything... Okay, so the intro is everything I would have wanted. The episode 128 Awakening is one of my favorites that often rewatch. The smoke effects are simply too good. And the animation of those eyes so clean. Exactly. Is he going to show the transition again? No. So the one thing that I wanted to look at... I wonder if he transitioned this like this. Let me go back to here. Did he transition it this way? With the fade? I'm trying to see. Let me get the frame by frame here. No, okay, so in the anime it does just cut like that, right. I remember this was something that I talked about a lot in the last video. Okay. So yeah, moving on from that. Let's see. Let's go back to here. Dang, that's crazy. That shot, bro, holy cow. Oh my gosh. Especially seeing it slow down a little bit. Man, oh my gosh. They got it like to a T, bro. Holy moly. I know obviously that shot where they're kind of like in the silhouette is a little bit different. Yeah, oh my gosh. I even like the Dokkan version of that shot better if I'm being 100% honest with you. Very, very interesting. Yeah, definitely. Wow. The references honestly are so insane, honestly, these days with like how accurate Dokkan tries to be to the source material. You know, this is some fire stuff when the... Wait, what did he say? Hold on, let's go back to that. When the only complaint I have is the wrong effect for the punch. True. Yeah, they did a really good job, like, you know, basically just getting exactly what the anime did. Very, very interesting. That's why I always like to take a look at these comparison videos. I know we did as well in the UI Goku one too. The way I edit things, I haven't seen stuff that's yet again so hype. Why did they switch the order of the kicks there? That's kind of interesting. Wait, what? Why did they switch the order of the kicks there? Okay. Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Yeah, you can see that he had to cut it in the anime footage. Interesting. Also, I'm sorry if you can hear that outside. There's people cutting the grass. What a great time for the grass to be cutting. Oh, yeah. Okay, so, yeah, that is supposed to be, like, kind of the opening one, but also the one where he has his eyes closed. I have nothing. The essay is perfect. Yeah, honestly, like, that's what I'm saying, man. I think that's what's so cool about, like, modern Dokkan animations, is it's clear to see that they really take some time to make these as anime accurate as possible, which I really, really like. Dude, even this, I was so impressed by this when I first saw it, man. Holy cow, dude. They cooked on the transformation. I don't know if that's my favorite animations in there, but it has to be done. That's how it's done. I'm utterly, completely blown away by this. Yeah, they definitely cooked on the boy, for sure. Look at that domain. Yeah, this, they definitely did a very good job with as well, too. Yeah, basically 1-to-1. Like, it's a little bit of a different color scheme on Goku, like, ever so slightly. Again, this is the only thing that I really wish they would have done. And also having Goku actually, like, jump backwards rather than having him just not appear on the screen anymore. But I really wish they would have had him enveloped in the UI aura, because I love how he looks like that. Wow! That's crazy, dude! Notice the effects themselves are rotated. Oh. Interesting. That's really weird. The frame caught me off guard. Is completely different. Oh, wow. Huh. Interesting. See, this is why I always like looking at iKevinX's videos, because he's always so detailed when it comes down to the little nitty-gritty of these things. That counter was something I waited for so long. I love the start of this. Hey, we're all expecting a 3-foot hex, but instead, entirely different. Big explosion, definitely caught me by surprise. I don't understand why Goku is coded in key in the counter, not during the essay. That's what I said! Thank you, my goat! Oh, yeah, okay, yeah? What do you think? Shoulder isn't quite there. Yeah, I feel like it's definitely that one, for sure. That's a pretty iconic shot, I swear. I've seen it so many times. The hand, we win. Oh, that's cool. The photo was brought to you by Sir... Let's go! Dude, it's so funny. I swear, ever since, like, I was like, yo, bro, can I use your videos for, like, my animation analysis videos? Because they would be so helpful. It's so funny to see that iKevinX has, like, implemented the whole Stinky Sprite meme into his own videos. You love to see it. My goat, for real, for real. That's so funny. Yeah, like, look at this. I talked about this in the video as well, that it's like, man, what the heck? You literally can't even see Goku because Jiren's goofy sprite is blocking the screen. This could be I'm gonna, you know what, iKevinX? I'm gonna screenshot this. I hope you'll probably watch this video. You usually do. I usually see you in the comments of these videos. I'm gonna screenshot this particular frame, post it on Twitter, and I'm gonna like tag you in it, and just no context. This will be tweeted. Anyway. Moving on from the certified Stinky Sprite moment, we have Goku Kinaway. They just threw the sprite in there. It's a little bit weird. Yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. For sometimes I feel like they don't even need it, right? Like, it's just not there in the anime. I don't know. Very weird. Dang, look at that. Like, almost 1-to-1 on the punches, man. Yeah, so cool. Bro, even in the way that he moves, ooh! And they improved the faces a lot in the Dokkan one, because obviously sometimes in DBS the faces were a little bit rough looking. Here's the comment, this frame is different, Dokkan fumbled hard. Wait, let me see again. I guess it must be the key? I don't know, it looks similar enough to me. iKevinX, if you're watching this video, bro, let me know in the comment section. I feel like, maybe he's just joking. I don't know. I definitely think, though, that, like, the little bit of the blue lines in the actual, like, Key Blast are definitely kind of missing in there. But again, like I talked about in the original video for this, it definitely feels like that this is kind of a thing of, like, the framing, where, unfortunately, right, because Dokkan has the, like, vertical framing, it makes the shot look a little bit different, whereas, obviously, in the anime, it's a little bit more like the horizontal framing. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. The explosion looks very similar too. And then, yeah, I think I forgot about this. Maybe I did actually end up mentioning this in the last video. I was trying to think how I was trying to articulate what I was about to say. I think I said that this was only Omen. I don't remember if I ended up pulling up this reference, but I completely forgot about this, which is like the ad break shot during this episode, right? This is definitely what this is a reference to, and obviously the poster too. Alright, let's see what iKevinX has to say. As I write this, I can't imagine what I'm going to use for the thumbnail. I hope you guys clicked, though if you're reading this, you definitely did. Silly me. I laughed a little bit at the beginning because all the different angles going by so fast, some odd choices, and then the pitiful... And are a pitiful cry of those who want to cry about something. This unit is perfect. I love it. Thank you for watching. My go, for real, for real. Thank you, my boy. Yeah, obviously, link to this video will be in the description. I just wanted to put this included in here because I obviously mentioned in the last video that I was going to watch this in the next animation analysis video I did. So we'll have to do the same thing for JIREN when the comparison is put there, obviously, so then we can see the references between the two. But with all of that being said, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you did. And I know I said it a million times in this video, but definitely let me know your thoughts on JIREN in the comment section below. And with all that being said, I will catch you in the next one. Dokkan Assets out. Peace.